approve the minute.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Aubrey, do we have a second?
Second.
Kate, any discussion?
Kate, are we recording?
We are.
Because I'm note taker and I'm gonna go back and.
I see.
Does anybody have any discussion or questions on the minutes?
I have a question maybe for Peter, whether new members are confirmed yet, or is that until January?
In January.
When it becomes
Or
standard?
maybe, yeah,
Mhm.
when what are they'll put them on for first reading,
It's
for-
on.
or they're on.
We're on second. So,
Oh, they'd already. put 'em
so
on.
this next Monday, they will be approved.
Yep.
But then the committee doesn't take effect until January. Right? So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All those in favor of accepting the minutes from the October 26th meeting? Great, motion passes. Next agenda item is welcome to the Eco Club members. We are overjoyed to have you back. We recognize it's a busy time of year and I hope you understand the importance your voice has to this committee and to this city at large and the perspective that you offer. So we just to catch up on where we've been a little bit, if you haven't had a chance to read the minutes, this committee, which was a blue ribbon committee of the mayors, is now moving to a standing committee. So that means it's a permanent committee. When you form permanent committees, you need to set the number of voting members. So we've set that there will be 2 students that will vote. So we're in the process of figuring out how we can write what's the word that you use? What's the
ordinance?
ordinance for the student representation on it to make sure that there will always be continuity and how those members will be chosen from your group. So that's where we're at. I've been in touch with Hannah and Evie. So you should see the draft soon.
Okay.
And do, comment, but also we wanted to open up to you guys to see if there was anything you wanted to share with the group tonight.
Well, in our past few meetings for Eco Club, we've been talking about this new program. I'm blanking on the name right now, but we're gonna try to get some restaurants around Portsmouth to sign up for this idea. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Stuff. Where you have to ask for to-go utensils, like the plastic disposable utensils, so that the majority of people wouldn't be receiving them unless they actually need them, because a lot of times they just get thrown away. And so we're just trying to reduce the amount of plastic. So that's something that we're focusing on right now. And we work together at a restaurant in Portsmouth, so we're gonna try to talk to our manager about starting that.
And especially when you're ordering online, you could just add a quick little tab on DoorDash or any of that just to check it off if you want it, because it's just unnecessary if you're bringing it home. You have your own utensils. So it'll save a lot. And we mentioned reusable containers. So you can bring them in. I can't forget all the details about that, but you can bring it back after 2 weeks, just having basically bring it back so you wouldn't have all of the extra containers just to throw away. And she said that we do work together, so we're going to talk to our manager about bringing that stuff to our restaurant. So
That sounds fantastic.
yeah.
Is it on the, I've heard of the program. Does it automatically set it as opt out? And you have to go the extra to click to get the utensils?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so we're basically trying to bring awareness to more restaurants, because there's only there are some in Portsmouth doing it. We want to expand that to mostly all of them.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do right now.
That's
a big job.
Yeah,
Lots
it's a really big job.
Some restaurants in Portsmouth, so good on you.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention also, great job at the election day campaigning outside. I know Eco Club was there and as a school board rep, I got a lot of emails saying this is really good stuff.
Yeah.
It was a great example of using a public format to send a message in a positive way. So
It was really great.
it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I just, because I'm spelling it handicap. Could you say your name and spell it?
or Katie Bell. So Katie and then a space B.
AAT.
Katie
Yeah.
space BELLE.
Katie
Bell, a B.
Oh, Bell B. I told you I hear him
It's
there.
okay.
And are you what year are you, Katie
A
Bell?
junior.
You're a junior. And name, spelling, so I can get it in what year?
My name's Reina and it's RENA.
RENA. I can do that.
And I'm a junior as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'm so glad to see you.
I just want to offer, there's somebody in the community who is working on a pilot program for reusable takeout containers, so it's not officially started yet. They're
Okay.
still working on some of the things, so I can work on trying to get you guys in touch with that person.
Definitely.
So-
Thank you.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
anyone has ideas for us, we're trying to just like save more. I don't know.
Mhm.
Can I confirm that you guys are using the utensils at the high school this year? The actual silverware? Is it back?
No, we still have plastic silverware.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that something that we tried to do, bring back the?
Yes, and we
outside-
lost it during COVID. So
No,
middle
yeah.
school is back. And the elementaries, last I heard, were back. So we're not back.
No, we still have our plastic.
Great.
And I think they're wrapped in plastic too.
Yeah, they're
They're
individually
individually
wrapped,
wrapped as well, which is
Even better.
Yeah.
Okay,
So Kristen Shaw is on Zoom. Cover up your agenda. Can she raise her hand to ask a question? Oh, great. Kristen, you want to go?
Hi, Kate. Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to mention to the Eco Club members that the health department is interested in assisting with both of those projects that they're talking about. So for them to be aware that we've been in discussions about the reusable containers. It's actually a new food code update for us to be able to allow that. So we can help them possibly get messaging out, and also the other part, the opt-out program. We're totally on board with that. So I will try to reach out to them outside of the meeting to see how the health department might be able to help with outreach to the restaurants.
Great.
Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Perhaps you guys could share your emails and we
yeah.
can make sure we get them.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Do you have to?
They have to listen to help.
Yeah.
Good.
Any other questions for the Eco Club members today? Great, okay. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the Community Engagement Committee update. I don't know who's.
I'll take care of
Great,
that.
thanks, Effie.
Portsmouth Climate Action is a group that meets weekly and we meet Wednesday nights. So last night we talked about the community engagement update. And one initiative we have going is called Bright Action. And it's an app where you can sign up your household and look at activities that will help reduce your carbon footprint. So we only have 79 households signed up, but we would love to get you both involved, and then you can get all your friends involved, and I can send you information about it once we get your emails. It'd be great. And it's kind of a fun website. They divide it into big categories like energy and waste, and they have a lot of ideas, and they're not expecting that everybody does all these things immediately, but some things are longer term to think about, like replacing your stove or buying an electric vehicle. That takes a long time, but puts the ideas in people's heads. So that's going. And then we, as part of that, we have a newsletter coming, and it goes out to a couple hundred people now, I think, you know. And then on Monday, we had a community climate conversation, and I believe it was our 4th, and it was about health, and Jess Dolan organized it. And we had a couple of professors from UNH that talked about health impacts with climate change. It was really a lot of learning going on. In the Portsmouth Climate Action Group, we're talking about future community climate conversations, not just the topics, because we have some good topics in mind, but the format and how to engage people and have some discussion and community involvement. So you'll be hearing more about those. And, oh yeah, I meant to say for the one on Monday, we had some city staff there. Kate was there, and I think Kristen was there as well. Yeah. Thanks, Kristen. And I think we had someone from the state as well, but I didn't get her name. So I'm not sure about that.
Kristen
Public
Kim.
health
Kim also
officer.
from the health department, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Right, great.
Mhm.
So it was great. And we had some people that we hadn't seen before at community conversations. So it's always nice to have new people. We had about 27 people attend that session on Monday. So that's it for community engagement, unless there's any questions.
Can I just say, that's a really positive turnout, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanksgiving Monday, we weren't sure how that would go.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And someone from I think it was the guy who was in the back of the room, I can't remember his name, but he gave me a call the other day and wanted to jump in on the Portsmouth Climate Action meetings. So
I
I
have
gave,
an email from him and I'm gonna call him. And how many know much about climate and how it affects health? Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought I knew some things. And what's great is that one of the big things I'll just share for you is climate is a systems issue. So you almost have to attend everything at the same time and how everything interacts. And that was the big message. You couldn't do anything without affecting people's health. And so one of the beautiful things is, do you operate on your individual level or on a big level? Where do you get into the system? And we saw that they were giving opportunities on all levels to get into the system to affect better health for our community. So that, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that CCAN, so Seacoast Climate Action Now, I think is the acronym, is redoing their website. And we're hoping that we'll be able to post the slides from community conversations like this. So you'll be able to look back at them, or if you miss it, sometimes watching a recording isn't as engaging as looking at the PowerPoint with the graphics and the references and everything. So that'll be coming.
I was gonna say, there's great value in that though, because the city website has, wonderful resources on what the city's done in the past, and some of those are PowerPoint presentations that are just included in, and that's how I initially learned when I first moved to Portsmouth about all the things that the city had been doing. So I think people do go out and find that, that information.
Right.
Welcome, Josh.
Thank you.
We would like to introduce you to our Eco Club members that are here tonight. This is Katie Bell. She's an 11th grader, and Raina, also an 11th grader.
Very
Nice to
cool.
meet you.
Thank you both for coming. My name is Josh. And what was the check-in question?
The check-in question was, what brings you joy at this time of year?
The sun.
No one said that, so that's fantastic. Thank you, Effie, for the update. We are now moving on to the solar overlay district city council update.
So at the prior meeting, Kate and I had an agenda item posted. It was buried in the packet for whatever reason. It was in reverse order. But the motion itself was essentially a request from the city council for the city manager to report back with the, I guess, the preferred method of moving forward. And it included with it the draft ordinance, which the committee worked on, along with at least 3, if not 4, other ordinances throughout the state of New Hampshire that had solar overlay districts, along with one from the, and I'm not going to attempt the acronym, but a model ordinance that did that. And for anyone who's not familiar, this is for private property, and the goal for a district, because there's all different districts throughout the community. The best known one is the historic district. And based on whether or not you're in whatever district, you could do certain things without needing to go in front of certain boards. And the goal of creating a solar overlay district is to make it easier for people within the district to have to do less to get approval for solar arrays.
Because you're not talking about the residential, like an individual house, you're talking about something larger than that.
It doesn't, we did not specify
Okay.
one way or the other. I mean, the thought would be, it would be more geared towards large pieces of land, but it's all privately owned land. So,
Okay. So then the overlay would almost include the entire city, the footprint of almost the entire city then.
so there's some parts of the city where you would not be able to put solar arrays. And they
Okay.
were requesting from essentially the planning department to come back with what method makes sense, whether using some geospatial algorithm to show this is where it makes sense or a different approach. And when we hear back, we will be sure to share and go from there.
But it would be areas where, when you talk about zoning, it's considered a principal use, so it's the primary use on the property, which is something that needs to be spelled out in the zoning ordinance, so people could go put a solar array in an upland area presumably that doesn't have anything else on it. Which there are not very many of those, unfortunately. But-
So does it also cover secondary use?
So, secondary use, so the principal use is it would be.
So there's a parking
That's
lot
what
as a
we're talking about.
principal use to start with.
If you wanted it as a secondary use, accessory use, you can, right now you can do it like on your house. We'll put them on your house if you wanted to put it in the parking lot. But we will put something in there to make it clear that you could do it as a secondary use. I think that's the goal. We haven't really worked on it yet, but I think that's the goal, is that not only will we find, I mean, that'll probably be more useful for people to understand where it can go, is not only do you have a parking lot, but you could put solar canopies in your parking lot. I mean, I think you could now, but if someone wanted to do that, maybe they'd be encouraged to, or maybe a smaller business that isn't thinking about it, might think about it when they see that. And there could be outreach done around it too, and point to that, so.
I was in Vermont last week and I saw a whole bunch of parking canopies.
Great, oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, good for these people up here. I can't say that I've seen any down here in New Hampshire.
No.
How big, like how many vehicles would fit in a canopy, like individual or
Probably
like
the,
nice?
the largest one I saw was maybe 20 vehicles. They were all fairly small, yeah. Just adjacent to buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, does the Soul Smart program offer any guidance for us on how
Yeah.
to do this?
They have, I think they have some ordinance guidance. Yeah.
Great. Anything else related to that? Okay, let's move on to the EV charging update, which is under review by the planning board. Is that you, Josh, or no?
That might be me.
Okay, great.
Please.
A long time ago, Josh put the charging update to,
And Council Cook.
and Councilor Cook, sorry. They put together a request to put an ordinance together, and then a request to get that ordinance sent to the planning board. The planning board took it up at their last meeting and they voted to have a work session, I believe was the outcome. And at that work session, they'll talk about what we did as staff, or the staff, when they brought it to the planning board, was took a look at the ordinance. Added a little bit of language, a few changes where they could have adopted it as it was, but they wanted us maybe add more to it, make it a little more functional, I think is what the chairman was thinking. So we'll give you an update at their next, I think they're gonna try to pick it up in their January meeting, what the outcome of that was.
Is the work session open to the public?
It would be,
All right. And could we, when you know when it is, could you let us?
of course.
Awesome. And I guess for your information, it's the same concept as the solar arrays. This would be for private electric vehicle chargers. So people know, what type of electric vehicle charger can they install at their home or possibly at their business, but that's the general concept.
Or if you wanted to start like a charging station that was a business by itself, again, this principal use idea that was the only thing you did was a place where people could go to charge their vehicles, that would be shown where you could do that in the zoning ordinance.
It's exciting.
Josh, for private residences, or maybe Peter, does that somehow have to tie into the utility and what the grid can support in any part of the city or something? Or
So,
is it kind of separate from that? And that's just a different question.
well,
Well, I think the it has to tie into the grid, but
Yeah.
the utility doesn't regulate whether you can, the city doesn't regulate whether you can or can't do it based on the grid. The city would, on a private residence, we would just allow it as an accessory to your dwelling unit or something, but we'll call it out more specifically in the ordinance, but there are issues with the amount of power, as you probably know, needed for some of these solar, electrical charging stations. So it is something that you have to work out with the utility company before they'll give you the power for it. There may be a transformer needed or something like that. I don't know all the details, but I know that there are areas in the city, I think even the Bridge Street lot is having trouble getting the power to the lot to put the charging stations in that are wired there. So it's an ongoing problem, but we keep tackling it.
Is that Bridge Street chargers, are they fast chargers, like level 3 chargers, or are they?
I don't know if they've even
Yeah, I don't,
wired them yet.
I think there, some of the parts which were required are in storage at the Foundry Place parking garage. They just don't have everything yet to install them, and they're level 2 chargers.
So it's not the matter of getting 480 volts there, it's just a matter of getting the actual charger sort of in place.
It may be both, but they did when they repaved the lot, they did do the wiring for the EV chargers. And if you're standing at the top of the lot, if everyone remembers the pop-up where the sheds are, if you look down to where the concert stage was, there's an electrical box.
Mhm.
That general area are where the EV chargers are gonna be in the Bridge Street lot.
So who, can you just say a little bit more about that? Who owns those EV chargers? So
The
is it-
city, well. That is a good, I'm not sure if we lease the chargers or if we own the chargers outright, but I believe we,
And if I bring my car in there and charge it, who am I paying for the charging?
I just plugged my car in the city hall lot. There's only 2 chargers there. They're level 2, and I pay through an app.
Yeah.
To a private vendor.
So
And
the
I
city has a
imagine-
contract then with a third party?
I don't know, but I was wondering if there are plans to have any more chargers for the 2 chargers, because lots of times they're both
Are they both full?
full.
All the time.
and I know that 2 here, just based on the amount of juice to get some, they're weaker and takes more time to charge. Let's say the ones in the Foundry Place garage, which are stronger than the ones in the Hanover garage.
Sure, is that a difference between level 1 and level 2?
So they're level 2 chargers, but it's the amount of electricity that goes to them.
So there's different variables of.
Yes, it's, there's a lot going
So
on.
your level 1 will be basically like a wall outlet.
Yeah.
Level 2 is more like an electric dryer,
Dryer.
240 volts, but it could be, the charger itself can have different kilowatt ratings within that level. That's what you're getting at, right? I
Yes.
assume, yeah.
Yeah.
I am curious, I don't know if there's somebody at the city that knows how these contracts or arrangements are working, because if we have these the chargers also in the garage.
I
the
can
gar-
check on that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
the garages, are taxpayers paying for the infrastructure
So
and then the city contracts with a third party or?
I believe, yes, taxpayers paid for the infrastructure, expect the budget
Mhm.
for them to go in. Taxpayers are not paying for the electricity. Electricity is paid for by the person who is paying for the charging. But there's clearly, whether it's is it e-charge, the charge point, charge point. So like, yes, for they're going through charge point for the chargers, which just implies that they're going through a contractor. So
Yeah.
And I
But
think
do
in
we?
some cases, the charges are paid for with grant funds too, so it's not all general fund.
And do we generate any revenue from the third party? Or are they just check?
yeah, those are all.
Good
Yeah.
questions.
It's curious, because as we go forward, it's good to understand what that model is, and do we carry that same model forward for all city property chargers? Or are there other models, like what are other cities around here doing?
I was just gonna point out, there was, I don't know if it was one of you, somebody sent me an email about a city that was doing chargers at every light post. They had these funky light posts that had a panel that
Right.
you pulled down and you could charge. So at any light post you could charge.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, you know? Especially if you think about the Islington corridor with all the individual light posts, if you had that many chargers on the street, which eventually we're gonna get to that stage and it's gonna be faster than we think.
And that's partly why I'm asking these questions is because, we should be thinking 2-3 years ahead of where do we want to go? And what are some other cities doing? And especially if there's capital dollars that are involved, getting ahead of this and planning and where should it go? And so
Well,
I didn't mean to
Yeah,
put
no,
you on the spot.
And I've been grilled over the past 6 years since those went in,
Yeah.
where people are like, why are city taxpayers paying for the electricity? And I always said like, no, the person who's charging the vehicle is paying for electricity.
They were free for a little while.
They were.
Were they at first? And the garage, I think they were.
I think in
right?
Hanover,
Yeah.
they're
Was
they're
that the
really.
very
good one in
first one in
Hanover,
Hanover?
Yes.
We enjoyed it for a couple of years.
And the other question is, someone was talking about these battery replacement setups where you go in
Seen that, yeah.
to a first service station, pull the battery out, put your other battery in. So the charging, that's the charging. It doesn't charge. It just, I don't know where that's going or if that's gonna happen or,
That's cool.
That's a whole technology shift from
Yeah.
manufacturers to do that.
Maybe as part of the
Battery
cap
down.
too, this is one of our longer term initiatives that we, start doing research on as
Yep.
is the future of charging, both not just privately, but on private property, but also on city property too. Because at some point here, 5 years from now, we're gonna have this paradigm shift where more, so many vehicles are gonna be electric.
Yep.
That we're gonna have to think about parking spots offering more and more parking spots offering
Yeah.
charging abilities, yeah.
Well, and on the building side, what I wonder about is all the new multifamily buildings. I mean, where they have a parking lot for 50, 100 cars. I mean, in the lifespan of that building, every car that's parked there is gonna need to be able to charge. They can't just plug into their own house, because the house is the whole apartment building, so that really
Yeah.
needs to be looked at a code level, I think.
Yeah, and then how do you treat from a zoning standpoint, the number of parking spaces that are required for a multifamily building? If you have electric chargers, do they count towards your parking requirement? Or do we have to have a breakdown for electric and when does, it's gonna keep shifting, so how do you do that? Right now, we're thinking their parking space is a parking space, and I think part of that is taken care of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Effie, but I believe when you plug your car in to get charged, you pay for the electricity. And then once you're done, when your car is done charging, it'll start charging you more for leaving it there. So you're incentivized to leave the station
Oh.
to let someone else come in. So you're not hogging the space that someone else needs to charge their vehicle.
But for residential, it could be level 1. So it would be unlikely that
Right,
someone
'cause it'd be
would
an overnight thing.
pass the
It
limit.
needs a long time, yeah.
But if nothing else, it seems like every new building that's built at least needs to have the
Have some-
main infrastructure there, of at least the main line from the pole to be able to handle that in 10 years or something.
Yeah, and we have to think about workplaces and shopping centers, and a lot of places will have chargers.
In the high school.
Yeah.
Kids are gonna start driving, if they're not already, they're gonna start driving electric vehicles to the high school.
It's interesting because that, the pavement on that parking lot in a totally new layout happens this summer.
Yeah.
It's in the CIP, so we should talk to Kenny to see if it's,
That was the one question I asked the superintendent when it came, 'cause the general, I'm gonna get this wrong, but the municipal government and the school board, in the school system, it's two different batches of money.
yes, it is.
So like, we would have to work something out to make sure they have money to do electric vehicle chargers.
Yeah, I know.
So-
It's strange. It's why the students have to pay for parking. Because we have to pay for the plowing because we don't own the parking lot. The whole thing is, so there's a weird financials to it, but we should make sure we get it to work. I mean, that seems like,
And were solar canopies considered as part of that project?
I've been pushing it. I'm not on the, or I should say I've been a bug in the ear. But I know they need to really look at layout and drainage and traffic flow and capacity. It's funny, it was built back, that high school can hold 1,400. We're at a little over 1,000 now, but more students are driving now than when it was built years ago. So far more cars. So it's a challenge. And one of the churches, we can't park there anymore. So, and we're about to lose the parking at Tor, because that's gonna go into apartments where kids are parking now. So we need to think about better use of space. We lost some for one of the new tennis courts, that back area. We had to take up some parking spots there. So,
I know that one of the real needs there is more bike parking, especially for electric bikes. And so that might help alleviate some of the parking challenges as
Or
well.
make
If there's
an
adequate bike parking.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Effie.
Just one thing, I want to make sure everybody's aware that Portsmouth doesn't have level 3 superchargers. And it's really a lack that electric vehicle owners feel. I drive to Seabrook a lot to supercharge my car, which is ridiculous. But Common Man was going to be putting in a restaurant where Burger King used to be across from Water Country. They went through the process and got permission and everything, I believe, but nothing's been happening except the grass and weeds are growing there. So I don't know if they've given up on it or if it's just
They have not
delayed.
given up. They're just working their way through the site. They gotta come up with their site review agreement and bonding, but they're starting to move. So it did sit for a little while, but it's
Right.
I'm not sure their level, are they
They're
superchargers?
supposed to be superchargers
Okay.
when, that's what we read in the paper a
Okay.
year ago or something,
I
so.
know they're electric chargers.
They do have, on 93 and Hooksett, they have, I think, a dozen superchargers in each direction at Common Man.
Is Rochester, are they installed yet, or they're going to be superchargers up there?
They're there.
They're there, yeah.
And that's a private business?
I haven't been there.
I believe it is. It's a
Yeah.
private business.
Common Man, the Common Man on
In
the,
Rochester?
no, the one
Oh.
on 93
Oh, yeah, yeah.
is there as well.
In Rochester, I don't know.
I think it's a
There's
private
a
business
Walmart,
who's
I think, but
just took advantage of like, hey, there's no superchargers. Let's make some money on superchargers.
Well, and how fast is a supercharger charger vehicle from?
it varies, but if I stop for a half hour supercharge, I might go from, let's say 20 to 70 or 80%, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And it's improved over time. We get software updates. Goes faster.
Boy, a natural spot for that, for my money, to be at the traffic circle at the liquor store parking lot, because there's always extra space there. It's right on the highway where people want to pop in and do it.
Interesting that you mentioned that because the governor was talking about using some funds for high-speed charging at state-owned spaces along the highways, which is the liquor stores.
Right.
Are they going to see-
Co-locate the marijuana stores there.
I don't know if they worked that deal out, but he was just talking about it a week or two ago. I read in the newspaper.
So the CENH, the LES conference, there was a representative there from DOT, from New Hampshire DOT. Actually, I think he's the principal for DOT commissioner. And he did say that they are going to be, they did get funding through the IRA or are getting funding through the IRA specifically for charging stations on corridors, on interstate corridors. And so they are looking at 93 and 95. And one other, 101, was it?
That makes sense.
He
101
mentioned
makes
a
a lot of
third
sense.
one, a third road in the state that they're going to be, apparently they're going to be using federal funds to put in charging stations, superchargers.
Wow.
I really like what you said, Herb, about getting 2 or 3 years ahead.
Yeah.
Because I followed for several years in Israel, the model that you might know they were going to do. You drive up, you don't own the battery, you drop it out, they put the new battery in. And I don't know if you've heard or if anybody's talking about, if that system comes about, Are we going to invest in a complete structure? And so it's kind of like to get out ahead of this. One of the things we know, technology is changing at a rate faster than anybody or any individual can keep up with. So I think it's going to be like, the cassette tapes, or, I mean, we don't want to invest. That's a real issue. And so I don't know, you guys have gone to conferences. Have they talked about best practices? Are there car companies thinking about this as a potential, basically gas station? You drive in, drop it out, put it in. Have anybody heard about it?
I haven't, but the core infrastructure that would need to be in place would essentially be the same. What would be different would be how it's doled out. Like even if there was a supercharger, say at the liquor store, like we were just talking about, either people can roll their car in, plug it in, wait a half an hour and then go, or they can roll their car in, pull out a battery, drop in a battery and go. Either way, that battery needs to be charged at that location for the next car. So the energy still needs to be there. It would just be a different interface with
It
how it's
might be
charged.
configured a little differently.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'd be a waste to put in like the electrical cables and all the general infrastructure for it. It might be that after 5 years, that supercharger thing is scrapped and a new device is put there. That's a big bank that somebody, a service worker, charges all the batteries on and switches them in and out, but the power still needs to be there. So that's the big piece.
Yeah, I think that this is the more generic. However, if the major car companies who are producing electric decide they're going to have a uniform system where you go in, you drop out, it's going to be like gas station. You drop into there, you come in and they're going to, that could be a system that could be developing. I think it's more complex, and that's what they tried in Israel. It didn't work. It went bankrupt. But I haven't heard anything about it, but I think it would be very different because each gas station then would, like they have to put in the big gas tanks, they would have to buy all their charging. That would be a business. It's a different business model.
Yeah.
So that's what, when you said, I don't know what's out there, I haven't heard, but that's what I started thinking.
I've heard people talk about it, but I think you're right. It's a lot more proprietary and there's a lot more, it seems like a lot more issues with it than just plugging something in.
But again, with it, the
And the
cap,
weight
we can use the cap to start driving subcommittees or to start looking at, where are we going and putting together small plans for different, different things that we want to accomplish that are plans that are 2-3 years out, because we know that you can't just, some of these things like charging stations in Bridge Street, right? Or things like that. It's just not like a 12-month project start to finish. These things take years.
Right.
So.
I think the critical thing that we have to do is get the zoning in place so that we can move forward as the changes occur. Because ultimately, demand will drive businesses to change their models. Gas stations will switch over to EV chargers, and so we're going to see that response. But the limiting factor for us is going to be electrical infrastructure, and getting our utility partners at EverSource to upgrade the grid in the city.
Yep.
So that we actually have the capacity to handle all of it.
Right, that's a good point. Other comments related to EV charging? Lots to noodle on with that one. But I will make sure we should loop in with on the high school. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee membership. That was mine. So a few of us, I sent around a couple weeks ago an invitation to the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee meeting that happened this month. And a few of us attended. I think Aubrey, you were there, Bert, Effie, Kristen was there. I think that might have been just of us. But basically they were talking about sort of the future of community power and how that committee is going to work going forward and how their structure is going to hold up. And then they also had a guest speaker, the new
CEO or president of
Community, CPCNH, the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire.
Thanks. And so at the end of the meeting, they kind of discussed having some habit intermingling with the sustainability committee and how we have very similar agendas and overlap in certain areas. And so it was sort of discussed that it would be great if sustainability committee members want to attend some of those meetings as guests or to be on the energy advisory committee. Just so maybe we stay in the loop with each other. Peter usually goes to those, and if Peter doesn't go, then I'll go. So we already have staff that can sort of translate between meetings, but yeah.
Yeah, and currently I've been serving on both. And next year we won't have that model anymore. So they're looking for somebody from this committee to serve on that committee, because this committee will go down to one city councilor. And so we won't have the same representation. So that's the goal, is to have at least somebody here that does both and can share back and forth what's happening.
Sorry, I should let you get the update.
No, it's fine.
You're on so many committees.
I went to the committee meeting 2 months ago, and I know Kate, you were there. The two other items that I think need to be addressed is, one is the swim lanes. So I think there needs to be not only cross membership, but also swim lanes as to what are, as they go forward, and they're looking to become a full committee. And so as they become a full committee, what are the swim lanes? What is their charter versus what is our charter? Right? So that we don't step on each other, that we actually support each other.
Right.
Because that could be pretty easy. Because when I was in that meeting, there were a number of things that they were talking about that, like charging, here in the city, charging stations and stuff like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, they think there's some overlap here. But they're trying to figure out what they are going to do going forward now that community power is pretty much out the door, or at least the initial phase of that.
Right.
And I think that it's really important to note that most of the communities that have a community or part of community power have a standing committee that helps, an energy committee that helps manage that relationship. So because we have Portsmouth Community Power, the thought is we probably need a permanent committee that manages that relationship. But really, that committee has a different set of expertise than this committee. That committee is very much electrical experts on how electrical utilities work. So they bring a level of expertise on things like solar arrays that and understanding the technical side of it that this committee doesn't, but they don't do the strategic planning around it. So they're talking about, what do we do not only with what do we do to manage community power, but what do we do once we build up reserves from community power, and what kind of projects do we fund within the city? And that's where they're going to be looking to have a discussion with the sustainability committee, because those are funds the city can use to fund sustainability projects. So, and they'll be looking mostly at energy projects because that's their direction.
Right.
I think one of the things about the Energy Advisory Committee, there may be overlap, but they're not as broad and wide open as the Sustainability Committee that will look at anything. They're focused on the Portsmouth Community Power Program, and their charge really is to make sure that program functions successfully. And that everything they've done so far has been really narrowly focused on that. How do we get more people signed up? How do we get people to opt up to a higher level? What are we going to do with funds if we get a reserve fund? That would be something to the city council that might come back to the committee, but I think there'll continue to be cross-pollination between the two, but their charge is going to be much more narrow on, let's make sure community power is successful for the city of Portsmouth. And that we're keeping everything we need to keep in place to keep the program going, and that the community knows about it.
Yes, and at the last Energy Advisory Committee, it was really clear that moving people up from just having been brought into community power, but they're just at the lowest level, but to move a great percentage of people up would be an important thing for the success of community power. And that's something this committee could really help with, I think.
That's where I see that
That's-
the
yeah,
cross
that's
pollination
community
happening. They might
engagement.
say, hey, let's go see if the sustainability committee can help us get more people to opt up to a greener, higher, greener level. And this committee is good with coming up with ideas and then maybe.
Yeah, and the
Goes up.
Eco Club could be involved in that. Really exciting.
Are you guys
have
familiar
you
with
there.
community power, what we're talking about? It's cool if you're not, so does anyone who sits in those meetings want to give a better explanation?
I was
than
waiting
I?
to hear your
I can do it.
explanation.
Yeah, thanks.
If you want me to. Community Power is, the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire is a group of, mostly, cities or towns, but there is actually a county involved too, who banded together because the state law changed, to allow this. We banded together to form our own power company, essentially. Now, we're not generating power. What the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire does is it purchases power, and all of these communities join as members. So Portsmouth Community Power is a member of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. So we get all of our power through that organization. And Eversource still delivers our power. So we still pay for Eversource to deliver our power and repair our lines, and they do all that work. But our supplier is the Community Power Coalition, or in our case, it'll show up on your bill as Portsmouth Community Power. And because we buy our power as a group, we're able to negotiate better rates than what Eversource will give us, because the way that the utilities are regulated, they have to buy power on one day at one time, twice a year. The Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire can buy power at different times, and therefore keep the rates lower for its members. But also, the Community Power Coalition really values sustainability measures. So there are different levels of power you can buy, and every city has these options, or town has these options, and so you can opt up. In our case, you can have the same level of power of sustainability in your power of green power as Eversource, but then you can opt up to the next level, opt up to 50%, opt up to 100% renewable power.
Okay, who's the we here?
We, like the Portsmouth Community Power.
Yeah, like individual households?
Yeah, individuals
Yeah,
households,
so
sorry.
it's individual, like
households.
your parents, let's say, or your
Yeah,
friends' parents, their homes are now getting electricity through community power. And they have the option of getting the lowest level of renewable energy power, or they could opt for
25%.
higher level at 100%.
is it 22 point something? And then it's 30. What's the net? It's like
It's
30,
33,
33, 50, 100 renewables. So, and that's our default power supplier.
So
So
your homes are getting.
yeah, everybody in town is a part of Portsmouth Community Power, unless you pay to have a third-party supplier, or if you have solar panels on your roof right now. Those people haven't opted in. We're still working with Eversource on how to make that happen. So yeah.
But it's kind of similar in a way to the program you're talking about with restaurants, is that when this was initiated, everybody in the city was put into this program, and you have to opt out if you choose to do it. But as it turns out, most people don't take the time and energy to opt out. So
Right.
Yeah.
almost everybody in the city is there.
Right. We had a really low rate. Yeah,
It's cheaper.
And it's
to pay
cheaper.
it.
it's significantly cheaper. We had a really low opt-out rate. There were a few communities with a little higher opt-out rate. I think the highest opt-out rate was like 2.9% of people opted out. But those communities went automatically with a higher percentage of renewables, so their rates were a little higher. We opted to start at the base level and then gradually increase it as the rates went down, because electrical rates were really high last year. And so we knew that people would be much happier just to see their rate go down first. And then as rates stayed down, we could change our basic level to the next level. And that's the way that you get the real savings as far as renewables go, is you set your baseline not at the utilities baseline, but at the next level. And then you go up to 50% is the baseline for the whole city. So that's the hope, I think. Great.
That was my big takeaway from that meeting, actually, was looking at different communities that had either opted in for the base rate or opted in for the plus rate. And seeing how many people swapped to either opt up or opt out. And all the cities that had the base rate, they had like 90% of people that were staying with the base rate, and a few opted up and a few opted out. And all the cities that had the plus rate, it was about the same. They had 90+% of people in the plus rate. And only a few more opted out, sure, but and some opted up, but it was like, wow, there really is power to momentum. You put people in a thing, if they have to work to change it, they're probably most aren't gonna work to change it. So it really spoke to me of like, yeah, we just need to keep increasing that default to higher and higher rates to make more progress for our goals.
The third parties are being incredibly aggressive on getting customers back, because we were Direct Energy. And my wife, after about 6 phone calls, she just said, you got to put me on your do not call list. And they'd call her up and they would try to entice her with saying, we'll give you a better rate than Community Power to switch back to Direct Energy. So I don't know, Kate, you're probably aware that their companies like Direct Energy are being their telemarketers are being
I'm getting the
very
same
aggressive.
calls.
You
I
get-
did the same thing because I
Yeah.
was with Direct Energy, and then as
Yeah.
soon as my contract expired, I went back, and I'm getting the calls.
Yeah.
Wow.
But hopefully through education,
Mhm.
we can continue to just educate everybody that this is the right path for the city
Mhm.
and for its residents.
Mhm.
It really is.
Well, thanks, Kate. And Kate for the update on the
So,
Portsmouth Energy.
so what's
budget.
the action?
Oh, yeah, right. How are we gonna figure out who's the member that crosses over to both groups?
No, it's up to you guys. Is there somebody is
Would
there
any-
somebody who's interested in attending both? Is there?
Specific, or do we want to rotate or
Yeah.
just drop in?
Do they have set
Yeah, when do they
meeting
meet?
dates and times?
Thursday.
Usually Wednesdays
Oh,
now. But it isn't really set because they were trying to decide how frequently they need to meet. I think, I'm not sure if they're meeting in December. I still have it on my calendar that they are. But they met in November, so maybe not. It might be January is the next meeting.
So I think the next step is
They're looking at once a
finding out
month.
their meeting.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, they used to meet
Yeah.
once a month,
Well,
but
I'll
they went to
continue go,
less
so I
frequently.
I can report back, but
So,
So as they become I'm assuming they're gonna become a permanent committee. Then would it be written in there that, or could it just be written in there that one person from this committee is assigned to?
yes.
And then maybe you could even do like 3-month rotations, or you could get creative, I guess, right?
Yeah, they talked about doing, that's what they talked about doing, is making sure that it's written in that a member of the sustainability committee is on their committee if they become a permanent committee and they go through the ordinance process. And so that's why they're starting to explore this, I think now, is they're thinking that that's important to have somebody serve. And
So
so,
should we kind of follow that process and then determining who or how we're going to cross-pollinate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
yeah.
Okay.
I would just say it would be nice to have somebody though come to their next meeting, because I will probably not be here.
Right.
So it'd be nice to have
I'll
somebody.
probably, I couldn't go to the last one, but 2 meetings ago I went and I'll probably, just because it's it's an interesting meeting, right? You went.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very educational.
Mhm.
There's some really smart people on that committee.
yeah.
It's a
Really
scary
smart
committee.
people.
Yeah, I was gonna say to have one regular person from this committee, because you develop the technical body of knowledge by
Wow.
attending the meeting. So I don't think rotating would work for
And if
me.
someone was very ambitious, they could just join the committee if there was an opening.
Mhm.
That way, one person's on both.
Or you
committees.
could just attend, like that last
Yeah,
meeting, I
you could
just
just
walked in.
Mhm. Yeah, they have openings too right now. They have a few openings, so if somebody did want to apply to
But
it.
it's a blue ribbon, right?
It is, yeah, it is. And they had a few people leave and they never filled the spots, so.
Let me just check. Herb, I know you have an interest and I enjoyed the meeting. And are you thinking that that's something that you might want to do as representative from this committee.
Yeah, I'm happy to raise my hand for that.
Because if you would, I think that you'd be excellent, because it's your passion, interest, and you would be a good, you know, the issues.
Yeah.
So I would be strongly in favor of, unless somebody else wanted it, that you go ahead and see how they write it out and what would work best. But if everybody, I'd like to just say that we're in agreement with that, unless anybody has something else.
I second that.
Because the pay is really good, and I think you
Yeah.
can.
That was a great way to end that agenda. item. Moving on to discussion on small engine emissions.
Oh, that's me. Well, let me wake my computer up.
I wondered where that came from.
I'm.
All right, so I just put a whole bunch of ideas together, so bear with me for the next couple of minutes while I just kind of power through these, because I didn't want to just pull the pin and throw the grenade without just some supporting stuff. So I remember looking through the draft strategies for the climate action plan, and I did not, unless I missed it, I didn't see anything mentioning small engine emissions, which account for approximately 4 to 5% of gas emissions, greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, according to the EPA.
Say that one again, please.
What the small engine emissions account for approximately 4 to 5% of
4 to
greenhouse gas
5%
emissions.
Of all the emissions.
Yeah, in the United States, according to the
United States.
EPA. That's
Got
Can
it.
you just explain what small engines? Are we talking about
lawnmower.
lawnmowers or are we talking about
Lawnmowers, heat
cars?
blowers, weed whackers,
Okay,
just like, yeah, like all that. Yeah.
yeah, okay, perfect, thank you.
So. a lot of
But
times
not
they'll
to the
call-
level of
They'll
like,
call them SORE, small off-road engines,
Mhm.
stuff like, yeah, so.
Okay,
That might even include
would it be a
like
motorcycle
like little little
Mopeds?
TV sort of things, yeah.
or a moped, like a scooter?
Yeah, I
Could
don't see
be,
why
right?
not. Yeah. Well, that's not an off-road engine.
That's not, okay,
Technically, but yeah,
okay,
That's
sorry.
a Four-stroke, not four-stroke, two-stroke engines?
mostly two-stroke. That's what makes them so bad, because you gotta mix the oil in, and then the pollutants come out from there. So from nextcity.org, the EPA estimates that operating a new gas-powered lawnmower emits the same amount of pollution as driving a car for 45 miles, and that more than 17 million gallons of gasoline are spilled while refueling lawn and garden equipment each year. From the Illinois University
lot of
Smart
shaky
Energy
hands.
Decision Assistance Center, gas mowers emit 16 times the CO2 emissions per acre compared to electric mowers. Gas-powered mowers use the amount of electricity it takes to power 754 smartphones, while electric mowers use the same power that it would take to power 55 smartphones. From the California Air Resources Board. And so now I think the statistics I just gave you were for residential equipment. From the California Air Resources Board, they say today operating a commercial lawnmower for 1 hour emits as much smog-forming pollution as driving a new light-duty passenger car about 300 miles, about the distance from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, more than 4 hours of drive time. For a commercial leaf blower, 1 hour of operation emits the smog-forming pollution comparable to driving a new light-duty passenger car about 1,100 miles, about the distance from Los Angeles to Denver, over 15 hours of driving. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I have seen around in Portsmouth, more and more residences are using commercial grade leaf blowers. Everyone's got them, the backpack blowers, the same ones they use at the DPW to clean the parks. Whatever statistics you want to look at, we all know the small engines, such as mowers, leaf blowers, they're noisy, they're dirty, they're bad for the environment. And there's, I think, a growing acknowledgement that they're not actually good for the yards as well, because they're blowing off all your topsoil. And even our own state of New Hampshire, in the DHS environmental fact sheet, the first recommendation they have is to switch to electric operated equipment, which is, New Hampshire is never the leader on these things. Way, way, way down at the bottom, they say shrink your lawn, which is another whole thing. So just a little bit more. In Mamaroneck, New York, the operation of leaf blowers per the Village of Mamaroneck's leaf blower law is prohibited until September 30th. This includes all leaf blowers, including gas, electric, and vacuum. Furthermore, Westchester County law requires that landscaping contractors be registered with the county and that leaf blowers meet county emissions regulations. And from Audubon Magazine, I have more than 100 cities and towns now ban gas-powered leaf blowers or limit their use. The article goes on to mention New York, New Jersey, California, District of Columbia, Portland, Oregon, St. Louis, and Dallas, Texas, which was considering a ban on small engines, gasoline-powered small engines, until the Petroleum Industry backed a law that was signed into effect preventing any such ban in the state. Which brings up my point.
Surprising.
Knowing that we have to meet our climate action plan goals, what is going to be our strategy going forward? Because any type of ban, I feel like, is going to meet with resistance, at least at the local level, if not the state level. So it's probably worth spending some time trying to figure out how to incentivize people to embrace the change that they need to embrace. I think if we could develop some strategies to make the small engine transition happen, that we learn some lessons on how to apply those things to all the other changes that we're going to need to make to meet the climate action plan's goals. And on a side note, I've spoken with someone at the DPW about making this transition in their parks crew and on all their small engines, really. And I was met with some enthusiasm. I'm pleased to say I'll have to follow up on that. But just a couple of things as far as what other towns are doing. Mostly I've seen in my very little bit of research, like rebates. You get a rebate, you would turn in a gas powered mower to a scrap yard. You get a receipt from the scrap yard, then you go buy an electric mower and you take those receipts and you get some kind of incentive, a rebate, like a Visa, gift card or something like that. The other thing I have seen is like a borrow or rental, mostly a borrow program. So in Lafayette, California, they're lending out leaf blowers, or you can get an induction cooktop because they want people to try those out as well. And South Portland, Maine does both. They're offering rebates with their Electrify Everything program. And they have what's called what is that? SPTL, their South Portland Electric Tool Library. You can check out with a library card, an electric lawnmower, a leaf blower, a string trimmer, a hedge trimmer, or an edger. You can just check it out for a week with your library card. It's pretty cool. And so that's how I wanted to start the conversation. What do we do in Portsmouth?
Oh, just to say there was this great story on NPR just the other day. Cambridge is in the process of banning gas powered leaf blowers, and they're hoping for a full ban by 2035. But they actually had, MIT on talking about what are they going to do, because that's a real maintenance issue. And they're planning to phase it out earlier. So they're hoping to phase out all of their gas powered equipment, lawn equipment by 2030, which is, it seems like it's not that far away. I think it's reasonable to go start pulling these ordinances that, it's not a ban now, but maybe you could put a ban in place that's, a little more than 10 years out with a phase out time frame and all these incentives in place. And that would get people to start making this transition. I mean, I know in our household we did, and we switched to an electric. We have a leaf blower, but it's an electric leaf blower.
Oh, yeah.
And it works. It's great. It's just fine. It does just as good of a job as a gas leaf blower. And I think it's not an unreasonable ask. Yeah.
An alternative approach could be, because there's no enabling legislation that allows us to ban them yet, is seeing what's on the books for sound restrictions.
Right.
Because you're allowed to regulate sound and how much noise is being put out. Now, that would require someone going around handing out tickets, but I'd imagine the electric blowers make far less noise than
Oh, yeah, they do.
gas station.
And rakes are really quiet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The current
Well,
statute
electric
regs
motors,
prohibit leaf
That's what I
blowers, because
thought.
when I first came on this committee,
Yeah.
a neighbor asked me about it. That was supposed to be what I was supposed to do.
Recall.
But the thing is, when I talked to people, they said there's really no way to enforce this. So.
So are we saying that a good strategy is the incentivization
Yeah.
plan? Seems like a better,
And that South Portland library. is
Yeah,
really
Yeah.
the
successful.
library.
where do they house those? Not at the like, where would you, does the library have a
They have like a
basement?
shed somewhere. at the-
Yeah,
maybe
there
the
is a
DPW
specific
or-
building. I forget it was, I don't know where it's attached to, if it's attached to like
Community
a
center or
recycling center
something.
or the library, but there is a central location for that,
At,
you know.
at our
And people
public
see them.
library, they have
Telescopes.
metal
They have
detectors.
Yes,
plenty of
Yeah,
things.
So,
GPS.
I mean,
yeah.
not too far removed from leaf blowers.
Two quick comments. This topic is great because this is the direction that the city, right, as a city, we need to start thinking about heading in. I had a conversation recently with Chaz. Because Chaz is all about sharing like cars, motorcycles, mopeds, things like that. That how often do you use, right?
Yeah, right.
That
Right.
here you have, and so I think he would be a good person to talk to about this. He might have some really good ideas because the company that he started is in this share space.
Mhm.
I mean, why buy a electric powered leaf blower if 99% of the time it's gonna sit in your shed? Right? So, can we be smarter about some things like that in the community? And the other thing is, we could look at copying something like a Solarize campaign. So if those here are familiar with Solarize campaigns, or where, say in the town, you do basically, it's a group buy. You get 20, 30 homes that come together and they can buy from one or more solar installers. And they get, say, 20, 25, 30% discount because they're doing a group buy. This could be something that even this committee looks at and researches. Is there, I mean, maybe even somebody like Home Depot has a program or might have a program, or some of the other equipment suppliers around here would be interested in saying, yeah, we'll give you a 30% discount if you can sign, 50 people, homes in the city of Portsmouth to move to an electric lawnmower. So at least, it's not huge, but hey, we're moving the needle in the right direction.
I like those ideas a lot, and another idea that kind of fits their mission would be maybe seeing if there's some way to collaborate with the makerspace on this. They're already about a shared tool environment. That could be a great place to have such a library, and maybe the city does some funding with them or subsidizes it somehow, or something like that to kind of help promote their mission overall as well, since that's very similar.
You call it a pilot program and gets Home Depot and some others to sort of underwrite it. Get some greenwashing.
Just sorry.
I also think this would be something worth talking to the Conservation Commission about. I know for any members that come before, or any applications that come before us, we always ask if the applicant would consider following NOFA standards as far as lawn care management and things. And they don't necessarily address, last time I looked that I remember, like the types of equipment you use, but that seems like a good match to have people talking about, like, how are you taking care of your lawn and what are you taking care of it with, and those kinds of pieces. So it might be worth talking to some of the Conservation Commission members about that piece as well.
Steve, thanks. It's lovely to have data to come from. And I'm thinking from the big system and what this committee's about. And I just wanted to know from Kate and Peter, you've been getting input for what the cap should be about. Has this topic come up? Has there been any best practices? Have they talked about it at all?
Play next week.
That's
Mhm.
big.
Meeting next week with them. We're gonna dive a little deeper into what we got coming, so.
So
have an answer right now.
what I like is that we have the connectivity to the whole system. And now we get to get expertise, and you're raising the question. If we didn't have your input, the question might not have been raised, and they probably have some expertise in this, and they could give us some best practice and so I'll look forward to hearing back what that has to say. That's going from the top level. Then I'm thinking Portsmouth Climate Action is thinking now we've had community dialogues. We're going to be in January talking about our priorities for next year's and what conversations. And when I was just thinking, this is more off the top, but when we had the conversation where we got the whole group of participants, many people, when I talk to them about the urgency that we have for ourselves and our kids, they always say, what can I do? Or frequently say. And if we had a whole fair about what I can do, and it had single use, the gas engines and all the other things, it might be a tremendous, instead of a materialistic fair where people come to buy stuff, it could be an action. So this is giving me ideas for when we talk at Portsmouth Climate Action. What type of event would we want? Because this is city-oriented. We can take some of this city-oriented and then try to see how do we engage in the public in a significant way. So thank you, ring a lot of bells for me.
What are the next steps? Because what you brought here is.
Well, that's just it. I don't know what the next steps might, but I think if you drive around Portsmouth, there's landscapers and everywhere constantly working all season long. Now is like one of their peak seasons, obviously, but and then I just look around my neighborhood and everyone's got the leaf blowers that they use multiple times a week all season long. And I'm just looking around going, there has to be a change here. To achieve what we're trying to achieve with the climate action plan, and how are we gonna do it? Because people don't like being told necessarily, you're gonna have to get rid of your leaf blower on this gasoline powered engine. You can't use that. And I just think they're gonna have a really bad reaction to that. And I thought it might be worth getting ahead of that with some sort of plan for maybe like timed phase out. Okay, by 2030 or 35, we can get rid of gasoline powered small engines. But in the meantime, here's an incentive, here's a carrot here, and I like when I read about the sort of the borrowing programs, I thought that was a pretty cool way to do it, to get people to try them out and see that they're not, whatever bad things they may have heard, they just work. And I don't know, so I just kind of wanted to start there and just, what is the next step? I don't know.
I think one thing on the marketing side, because I've made that switch myself when I had a lawn, and I'll tell you, most people are not small engine mechanics, and the electric ones are so much easier to use. You just put in the battery and you go. You're not having to pull the thing and do the choke and hope all the moving parts are moving like they're supposed to be, and the carburetor isn't full of last year's gas. It's all clogged. It's just so much easier for the new ones. So I think from a marketing standpoint, just ease of use is the way to go. Convenience.
And I think there's an
And
upfront, I think
quieter.
there's more of the upfront cost, but I think if you average it out over the lifespan of that piece of equipment, I think it actually turns out that the electric stuff is cheaper. When you factor in all the gas and the maintenance and all that stuff.
Yeah, I
Don't quote me on
don't
that.
even know that they're
I don't
that
have
much
figures
more
for that.
expensive, especially if you, like within a tool family, if like your lawnmower and your leaf blower and your trimmer and whatever are the same thing, they can all use the same batteries, and
Yep.
that's a big part of the cost, so.
I have an odd question because I don't know enough about engines to know this. But it comes from, I grew up driving a classic car that was a leaded fuel vehicle. But when things switched to unleaded gas, you had to add an additive to it to make it work correctly. You could use unleaded gas, but you added an additive. Is there a fuel that can be used in these two-stroke motors that is less polluting, that would eliminate, that like an additive that could be put in gasoline that would eliminate that oil driven pollution so that people would have kind of an interim step. Because someone who just bought their gas powered leaf blower is not going to be really eager to relinquish it. I'm kind of wondering if there's like an interim, a cleaner fuel that
Well,
can be switched
I don't
to.
know if
and
it's
then
cleaner, but occasionally I read about people getting oil from friolators or something and driving their car across country on friolator oil. But it just doesn't sound like it would be cleaner.
Well, that is, but
It
it's.
smells good though.
It smells, yeah.
It smells like
You're hungry the whole
fries.
time. I don't know that though, the
I don't
answer
know.
to your question.
I don't know. I just kind of wonder.
I think the idea of the phase out makes sense, because I don't think that equipment lasts as long as like a car. I think it's
Yeah.
several years. So if you gave people time and educated them and had people around town using electric things and showing them how easy it is and that they're cost effective, maybe, and maybe the rebate program, I don't know where that comes from.
There's also an opportunity for like community development. There aren't, in my neighborhood, we share, like one neighbor has the lawnmower, one neighbor has the leaf blower, and that our yards are so close together and no one has storage space. So that's another way. If we can't get it through the library, no one in Portsmouth has massive yards. There's no need for everybody to own their own. You could have neighborhood associations that you raise money for, and that's
Same thing with a snow blower.
right.
Mhm.
I mean,
We
it's
share our
perfect
snow blower. It's
example.
great.
Same, the snow blower and the Echo lawnmower with the same batteries shared with the neighbors.
That'd be
Yeah.
nice.
Right.
I'm happy if you want to get together outside of this meeting, do some more brainstorming. I think talking to Chaz would be really good because that guy he's jacked up with ideas. And the fact that he's started a company that is in this share space. So, I mean, if you want to reach out to me and I mean, we could pull Chaz in because I think this is something that's so important. You bring up a great example. As a society, we've got to change. We can't, everybody can't go to Home Depot and buy a snow blower and buy a lawnmower. And it is absolutely insane that everybody's got this equipment in their garages and you use it this much
Right.
of the year. And otherwise it just sits there. And so I think there's huge opportunity. And what we didn't talk about is we didn't talk about all the damn plastics and metal and everything it takes to build these lawnmowers and snow blowers that people hardly use. I mean, you use for a very small portion of the year. I mean, it's just so wasteful.
Snow blowers are a lot hard though, because everybody needs them at the same time. It's a little harder to share.
We share our on our street, which is, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses,
Really?
9 houses. There are 2 snow blowers and we share them. So, we just plow out everybody. Everybody on the street just plows each other out.
You can just wait till you get older and your neighbors will plow your big.
It is that we're the youngest, we
That's
own the snow
exactly-
blower and we're
that's
the youngest
great.
and we plow everybody out and the other youngest plows everyone on the other end.
Great service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's about giving back, right? In positive way. But what did we decide? We're gonna have a small focus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And follow up with the cap.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I think that's
about this
important.
stuff and then not do
Yeah.
anything about it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Get some ideas and put a strategy together and.
Okay.
And maybe we should also put on next month's agenda as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Keep it going.
Come back and talk about it. 'cause
Report back from two of them.
Okay, great. This brings us to our final agenda item, which is the periodic presentation or report to city council as a standing committee.
That was my item, and I just brought it up more as group discussion because we have talked about it in the past, and I know when Mayor McEachran came here, he expressed interest in wanting to have regular reports from this committee, and I know we have 2 city council members who do that, but I thought it might also be a good idea as we become a standing committee and kind of establish our role and our presence and just our visibility, I guess, if we sort of collectively decided on, do we do that? How often do we do that? Who does that? Just, and I think it would be good for us to kind of be able to share to a crowd that might not necessarily watch our meetings, what we're working on and what we're doing. And maybe it's another way to follow up on some things that kind of get lost once they leave this room, that we can ask, where are we at in these processes and that kind of stuff. But I don't know what the rest of the group thinks.
I think it
Josh.
would be helpful, but we may want to wait till the cap is presented to the city council and then just build either off of that or in with that, start there. It's one of our major roles. It will be providing advice and guidance on implementing the cap.
I know, one of the things that would be nice, I think in January, because I think the cap will be ready around then, is a final report from the Blue Ribbon Sustainability Committee on all the things that were done in the last year. And that might be partnering with Portsmouth Climate Action to do these forums that contributed to the cap, but talking about all those things that the committee has done, the Earth Day events that in partnership with Portsmouth Climate Action, the work in partnership with Eco Club and having Eco Club here, just having just a quick, and it doesn't even have to be a presentation. It could just be a report to the council, so that they see all the things that the committee's done in the last year. I think that would be helpful. I don't know if the council sees all the work that you guys are doing, which is a lot of work. You know, the council only sees it when like Soul Smart comes to the council, or when solar array ordinance comes to the, you know, the request comes to the council. They don't always see it. They'll see it with the climate action plan. But I don't know if they'll know what level of work went into that.
I really like this topic, which kind of is going to be an ongoing topic. And I've been thinking about, I carry almost daily, what is the time frame that we have to act? And when I think about where our committee is, I think we operate on all the different levels, from how do you personally do your thing to how do we get to the highest leverage point to give us some possibility to keep it to 1.5. And when I talk to people, they say, oh yeah, that's really important. We got maybe 10, 20 years. And a lot of people are thinking that there's 10, 20 years. I don't know what your experience is, but when I hear that, I kind of get what I want to do with our committee is make more visible the urgency, the time frame, maybe even do some education on tipping points and what tipping points mean. And a tipping point is we don't get to go back. So we're talking and how do we present this? So if we're going to talk to the city council, I think it would be good to say, here's what we've done. And here's the magnitude of where we need to go. And here's why we have a climate action plan, which is a leverage point, which is going to have to take some real serious heavy lifting and high prioritizing. And so that's where, if I were to do a report, that's kind of where, and I'm just talking off the top of my head, because a standing committee now, let's say a 3-year time frame, what are we going to do? And I'll bring up something if we're close to the end, like, Steve, I love what you brought up. And then at a Portsmouth Climate Action, I'm going to ask Bill to kind of share something that Effie brought up. How many of you are aware of a tour boat coming into Portsmouth? All right, so people kind of know about it. But there's a whole nother level to that that I hadn't even thought about. And Bill will give a little bit about that. And then here's why I'm asking Bill to do that. Here's small engine, here's tour boats, here's solar chargers. And the climate action plan, I hope, is going to say, yes, all these things are important. That's why I asked how many percentage? 4% is the endage? Are the tour boats 1/5 of percentage? So we put our energy for the near, anyway, you see where I'm going. So that's what your topic got me going on. And I think we're going to need to do that. Maybe if we have some time tonight to talk about where the standing committee's priorities are. And I think the January meeting, as we structure it, what are we structuring ourselves for? And where, because I think, are we going to get down to the level of we're going to implement actions or we do? So anyway, there's a lot to talk about.
I think the quarterly reporting or when it's super important because more people attend council meeting, no one attends school board meetings, but yet what's happening here affects everyone in the community. So if there's better ways that we can get the word out and plant a seed and then that travels, I think it's a great idea. And I love Josh's suggestion of waiting until it's standing and the cap is presented, because that's sort of the marching orders of this group on how the standing committee was drafted. Of going forward to frame out what do those presentations look like, whether it's a report form or an oral form, but for consistency and transparency.
I highlighted the January council meeting. I think it's January 17th. I may be wrong. But the reason that date's important is that the council right after that starts looking at the capital budget.
Right.
And that capital budget is the budget that we adopt that goes into effect in July for the whole next year. So the next opportunity for anything to go in the capital budget is a full year out. And these things are really urgent. So unless the council is thinking about the urgency of climate change, it's really hard to get everybody on board with making changes to the CIP budget because we're not addressing some of the things we need to address. So making sure that, then when we're trying to amend the CIP budget to address something that we think is urgent, the council understands why. And I think that's what Bert was saying. It's, it's that urgency that maybe just isn't necessarily there. I think they're all very concerned about climate change, but I don't know if they understand the urgency.
And I think what's tough is we don't present urgency to people if there isn't some empowerment, because that just is depressing. So if we make a presentation, I think we need to present the urgency, and then that might be the context with, well, here's the urgency, but here's what we can do. We spent 2.5 years making a climate action plan. Here's the top 10 things in the climate action plan. Here's the 3 of them that will get us the biggest bang for the buck. Of those 2, they're cheap. The third one, which is the biggest bang, is the most expensive, but gives us, that's the kind of thing that might be helpful. Now, I don't know, how do we have a launch for the climate action plan? Do we have a plan for that at this point? Who presents it, where, and how, and what?
Yes.
Yes. And that's
We talked with our climate action plan consultant today, and they've got a plan to do basically a celebration meeting to launch the climate action plan. We don't know the dates yet, but it's going to be January or February, I think, is what we're looking at right now. And then
Workshop number 3 is gonna be.
that'll be workshop number 3. So it'll be a workshop in January. There'll be a workshop number 3 that we're.
Final
now.
feedback.
Get any feedback, get any support, but you get to see the plan, what's in it, give any feedback, and take it from there.
When is the date of the January meeting?
I think it's January 17th. I may be wrong.
So
Let Garrett be double
we
check.
meet now, we meet in December. Would it be helpful for our committee to do a prelude to the city council? That the launch as another step? I'm just trying to think how to synergize energies. So most things I was thinking that people have to hear, I have to hear it, most people have to hear it many times from many sources.
I don't know, I just think usually there's so much going on in January with the city council at those first meetings that it's probably not the best time to bring it to them. It's more, that's the community piece, and then the plan will be finalized, and then the actions can be strategized upon which, or the strategies will be looked at and which, how you want to, what does the committee want to tackle is really what I think the next step is. In terms of, here's what the plan calls for, how do you want to tackle those things? What do you want to take on? What do you want to bring to the council? What do you want to support? Where's the community support? You can, the plan will say what the community support was generally, but you know, what's the next step to get the council to buy in, to give money towards things, that kind of thing.
Other thoughts? Is it January 17th?
No, I can't
No.
find it. I don't think it's on the website yet. We just adopted the meeting schedule for next year. It depends on when Martin Luther King Day is. Does anyone know?
I feel like it's the 12th, 13th weekend this year.
Okay,
Just
so
finalize the school calendar.
is it the 16th? Do you know?
I don't know.
Would it be on a Tuesday?
It
Oh.
potentially,
Yeah,
yes.
it is the
Tuesday, the
after
16th.
Boxing Day.
Yeah. Tuesday, the 16th then. And then,
Well, in terms of timing, nothing against the consultants or the work you all are doing, but I think the climate action plan is pretty much done already. And the final workshop, there might be some things like small engines that come up, or ideas people didn't bring forward previously that will be added. But the major actions, the strategies, I think most of it is there. If we wanted to look at that last list of 70 things, that would give us a pretty good idea of what we're talking about. We don't have greenhouse gas measures for each item, but we know from reading other climate action plans, the big ones. So I don't think anyone should feel we have to wait till it's printed, sealed, delivered. For this group, I think we know enough to act.
So are you suggesting at the next meeting, we put on the agenda, the climate action plan as it exists now, take a look at it and see how that might dovetail with something we could do, as our committee would, want to talk at some meeting, and whether, January is not the right one, or whenever, or if it's a 5-minute talk or whatever, we could decide next meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess you're not wrong that the strategies in the climate action plan aren't like gonna be earth shattering. Oh, these are things we never thought of before.
We forgot.
It's more of a putting things together in an encapsulated way to then share with the community, and a point back to kind of thing. So it's more of a clearinghouse. Here's where it all is. There's nothing stopped anybody so far from doing any climate actions. So there's no,
Yeah.
I think, but in terms of sharing with the community, I think you asked what the next steps were. The next steps are sort of a celebration of here's where we are with the climate action plan. It'll be finished at this date. There'll probably be some follow-on, workshops. We have some money to do some work that was set aside, not spent on the climate action plan, that we could talk about as a committee on spending. Whether it's getting more outreach on strategies we want to implement, or hiring someone to do something, or whatever the steps may be, but that can be talked about for sure.
Good, and their job is to make it. Always the job is the language is so everybody can buy it.
Digestible.
And so that's what we would like to utilize that the best.
Well, that's what the plan is supposed to do, right?
Yeah, right.
But the
So we-
strategies are the strategies, so that.
Sure. So that's what we would like, and that's great.
Is there still time to request that in the budget, that we have a project? that
I
goes
mean, the capital improvement plan's basically far along, and I mean, the budget hasn't really happened, that's a different thing, but the capital things to be added, the council would have to add them after the fact. It's kind of late to do it now, it was really the departments had to get theirs in October, so.
Right.
There's really not a capital improvement plan process still to add things, but there's some money in place to do different things, and we could utilize those funds. You know, there's $20,000 we didn't spend in the climate action plan because we wanted to have money on the ground to do things right off the bat. So that's one area if we wanted to focus on using funds, we'd have that. The way the mayor presented it and the way I've always said it is, this climate action plan is then to try to get the community support so that the council feels empowered to spend money on the actions that are identified in there. So it's really anticipated to be the following year. Here's what we got identified, here's what we want to put in there, and we'll have time to do that. That's, I think, the way to look at it.
When the CIP budget comes to the council can modify it. We can add things to it. It's kind of the last bite of the apple, though. The council either can add something to it, or you can increase the amount of funds, which is what we did for the climate action plan. We just increased the amount of funds so that we had enough funding for it. So we can increase the amount of funds for some infrastructure as well, if that's climate driven. So, but that's kind of the last chance to do that, really.
So in our,
And-
sorry.
And we discuss it all of February, so we don't adopt it in January. We discuss it for, for a little while. Yeah.
Planning board, on December 21st, the planning board makes its recommendation to the city council, and then council doesn't take it up till January.
So in our meeting today with the consultant, it sounded like they were either finished or about to be finished doing final scoring of the strategies, I think. And like the prioritization and the funding mechanisms. So maybe if we can get that update within the next week or two, that's something that we can send a draft around to everybody, so we can come to the next meeting in December with like our top 5 that we want to talk about.
Great.
Vote on maybe
Great.
as a first crack at trying to increase the budget.
Well, we know community power is huge.
Right.
And moving people up in their levels would be number 1 or number 2 for this committee. I mean, we can predict that. Transportation is huge, but what we do with that and what would be the highest impact, I'd lean on Bill to answer that question. But to
Trucks and
start with,
buses.
those are a couple of, yeah, maybe 20,000 for a circuit bus.
Yes.
So it sounds like, wrapping up some of these thoughts from tonight, sounds like we already have some agenda items for next meeting. Just to report back on the conversation with Chaz on small engines. Update from the Eco Club on how things are going with your incentives, and you'll loop in with the city health is exciting. And we'll get a early draft of the strategies from the climate action plan that members can arrive to the next meeting with our own thoughts on sequencing, so that we could be ready to prepare for that, so that we can hit the ground in January as a standing committee ready to present to council. Are there other things that I missed in summary of those items for just rolling the conversation forward?
Before the checkout, just because we discussed it and it's a small item in some ways, but since Peter, you're going to be asking about the small engines, if there's best practice, Bill had a way of articulating about the issue of, it was about what we have control over, what we don't have control over, but what we should look at in terms of the big picture, in terms of transportation of boats coming in. Could you just share?
Yeah, I can probably do this pretty quickly. Last night at the Portsmouth Climate Action, Effie brought up the question of the cruise ships, which will be coming to Portsmouth, and that generated some controversy, and I don't think any of the controversy involved greenhouse gas emissions. And cruise ships can really be gross emitters. And I think a couple of weeks ago on Portsmouth Climate Action, we dug in a little bit into some of the numbers, but it's really not applicable to Portsmouth because I think that right now we're only talking about 6 ships a year and 100 passengers per ship, probably getting on buses to come downtown or walking downtown. So it isn't a really big deal. Other cruise ships really are a big deal. And if you've been to any Puerto Rico European ports and you see these ships with 3 or 4,000 passengers, those are really gross emitters and are a source of great concern. But I think more interesting for us last night was the discussion about really what belongs in the cap. And if you remember some of the Transportation Climate Action Group briefings we had back several months ago, and really the cap was just starting to be developed, we put on the table the question of, well, so much of what we're concentrating on is what the city can control itself, or what the community, households, individuals, residents, and businesses can control. But really what happens with the airport and freight ships and trucks on I-95 going through, what happens with that? And I would expect that the greenhouse gas inventory doesn't really deal with that, and the strategies don't really deal with that. But yet, when there's a debate over a cruise ship, are we talking about greenhouse gas emissions? And those are not hard to calculate. But it seems like that should be part of the discussion. And in the cap, I guess the question for Kate and Peter and the consultant is, how are you dealing with these really big other sources of Portsmouth's climate footprint that the city doesn't have control over and the households and the community doesn't have control over? It's probably not really significant to put into the as detailed strategies, because those really are things that can't be implemented, and then the baseline of greenhouse gas emissions for the city ends up being really massive, and the amount that can really be shifted and controlled is small. So that's a bit of a distortion. But I think where we ended up last night is really the importance of recognizing this, even if it's just a paragraph in the climate action plan, that it is very important to recognize that Portsmouth's footprint, carbon footprint, includes all these things, but that this cap is dealing more directly with the things that can be controlled. But these are important and need to be considered and thought about. And when there's something new, like more cruise ships or bigger cruise ships in the future, it should be part of the discussion. But I think that's about as far as you could go. And granted, the cap is very mature and pretty far along, but that at least a recognition of what you've decided not to include and why and its significance, I think, is probably not a heavy lift. And I suspect the consultant may already have thought about this.
And I think, Bill, thank you. I would just say, rather than saying climate action plan, I would say the greenhouse gas inventory. Yeah. And I know the last inventory had a paragraph that said, oh, and we should estimate Ps and I-95 and the Port Authority and all the boats. So we thought maybe this time we could just get more specific. And we were looking at the Port Authority in particular, the harbors, because of the cruise ship that's going to be coming through. But, Port Authority must know the types and numbers of boats that come through.
I was thinking about this because people have been talking about the cruise ship a lot. And I guess one thing, who said it, but it's only going to be 100 passenger cruise ship. So cruise ship is really not the right term when you think of a Carnival cruise ship. It would fit in Portsmouth. So we don't have that danger. But when you think about shipping, we've thought about the cap and shipping, and I was trying to wrap my head around it. And yes, they do dock in Portsmouth and they offload and unload, but they don't use their fuel in Portsmouth. They use their fuel out at sea. They get tugboats to push them into Portsmouth, and they get tugboats to push them out. So they probably use the fuel that they use just to keep their operations going, but it isn't a significant amount of fuel. So I'm just wondering how much that would account for. Airplanes are a whole other story. Out at Ps, the refuelers and the training, and that's a lot of fuel, and any cargo and fixed operator planes and whatever else goes in and out of there. That's something that
Yeah.
could be tackled. 95, we do address if I'm in the greenhouse gas inventory.
Yeah,
'Cause
so
it's
the
got-
last report had that, it was really one or two sentences, like a placeholder.
Yeah,
And I could just see for the next one, increasing the specificity of it. So, you know, we're
Yeah.
moving it along and
Yeah.
we show that we're thinking about this. And then if some technology comes along, or Portland, they have supersized cruise ships in
they do.
Portland.
They do have
you
the
know,
big ones. Yeah.
And, you know, how do they handle it? Maybe we'll get some idea. And then the next greenhouse gas inventory would be able to have more numbers.
And I think with the inventory also comes whether there's a potential to do something about the inventory.
that's
And
what I was gonna
let's
say
say
is-
the trucks on I-95, there probably is not much potential to do anything about it, but I think the cap is an opportunity to raise the community's awareness of really what the footprint is.
I think that's true. The actions are gonna be specific to things that we can do, not things that we don't have control over.
And this is a first climate action plan, and it's late in the game to be revisiting major things, but play as a,
Yeah, but
I think it's a
worth mentioning.
placeholder,
Yep, I think it's worth mentioning.
placeholder.
Right.
Well, it's been a great meeting as usual. I forget, we take adjournment and then the checkout question, right? Right, because.
Yeah, we're closing then, yeah.
And when is the next meeting?
Yes. December 21st.
And who's going to be, we should get the next meeting, who's facilitating? That would
Herb
be,
is taking minutes. I don't know if that.
yeah. Herb, are you-
Facilitating.
Yeah, you're facilitating, then
I did one last summer, but I'm okay doing it again.
Who will be the note minute taker.
It's easy enough to do.
we can put on the agenda as the standing committee.
Yeah.
Since John isn't here, he had made it up. Next meeting, we need to make the rotation, and then people will know when it's coming up. Starting in January, our December meeting, let's get January for the whole year, the rotation. And then if you're out and responsible, you'll get the replacement, and we can talk more about how we could do that.
So we just need thank you. We just need a minute taker for next meeting.
I have to miss the meeting, sorry.
Anyone available?
I could volunteer.
Thank you, Josh. All right, so we have her facilitating and Josh taking the minutes, and the meeting will be December 21st. So we can adjourn, and then before we leave,
I just had one last
Yeah,
very,
sure.
very quick
Sorry.
thing. I just wanted to, I think we should give a quick congratulations to Josh and Kate on their reelection. Thank you both for all you've done for the city and this committee. Do we have an idea of who will be with us after January? Josh, you're staying with?
It's not final
We'll miss you,
yet.
Kate.
We don't know what the mayor's gonna choose, but like,
Oh, the mayor chooses that.
the mayor makes all those choices. We put in requests for what we want, and then the mayor makes the decision. I just assume Josh has seniority. So that's how that is.
Kate did get more votes.
great comment, Aubrey, thank you. Our checkout question is always, what are you taking away from tonight's meeting?
Your last thought, or we're taking away? No?
Great, how about we start with you, Aubrey?
Okay, well,